Hello, I am Reverend Irene Smith, and I'd like to welcome you to Generationally Speaking. Here at the table, we come and we discuss life issues, no matter what they might be. As we sit at the table with each generation, we all learn, we all grow, we all are inspired. Generationally Speaking.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Personal Finances. I'm your host, Reverend Charlene Pemberton, and we will be having dialogues and discussions just to fortify everyone with their personal finance skills. My subtitle is If You Don't Know, Now You'll Know. We'll have a half-hour show, possibly once a month, and just going to be dialoguing about personal finance. The motivation for the show is since 2020, January 2025, our current administration has been signing a lot of resolutions that have affected us financially. And the motivation is that we have information to be able to defend ourselves against the changes that are taking place. Our federal government, which historically has been a place of employment where employment security was considered, is no longer that. So all of those that are in the workforce, we need to fortify ourselves against the challenges that we're currently facing. So we're going to be looking at options and choices that we have, because every time we have options, it eliminates stress. So I just want to have a conversation about personal finances. Let me introduce myself and my journey that brought me to the point of just a passion for personal finance. From my very early years, I'm the youngest of 5. I grew up in Southeast DC. And from my early years, I remember my mom always figuring how we were going to make ends meet. My dad would bring in the finances from work, and my mom would always have a sheet of paper and a pencil, just figuring out how we're going to pay groceries and do bills. So all 5 of us currently figure in some way, some on envelopes, some on paper. I do spreadsheets, but that was a takeaway we all have from seeing our mom doing that, what she did best, and that was figuring out how we were going to keep moving. That stuck with me. So we fast forward to when I came out of undergrad. I was blessed with a really good salary, especially compared to what I had in terms of resources in undergraduate school. And I knew, based upon my mom's legacy, that I had to be responsible with my personal finances. Well, my first year, just like anybody else, I blew my money. But when I got my tax form for that first year and the company said how much they gave me and how much I had to show for it, I knew I had to tighten up. So with God's providence, my office mate was a part of Christian Financial Concepts, which was a ministry started by the late Larry Burkett to just help people navigate their personal finances. Well, as God would have it, I was able to get the resources from that workbook to start a budget, to get my credit in order and keep it in order, and to just still have some fun, but navigate my finances responsibly. That resource was such a blessing that I began to help friends to get credit in order and get their spending plan in order. And then I had the opportunity to help teach classes at my church and helping people just to get started on budgets and pay attention to their areas of spending, because we all have areas where we spend money on. As a result of that teaching and the responses from those people, that passion was birthed. And I continue in one capacity or another, helping people in personal finance. Back in 2006, my IT job became at risk, and I decided to take the plunge into financial advising. God blessed me to finish the Series 7, pass the Series 7 exam at my first try, and that embarked me on a journey of 9 years of being in the financial advising industry, where I was able to help not only with budgeting and credit, but also be licensed to offer financial advice on insurance and investing. So with all those tools, I've always had a passion and continue to have a passion to help people with their personal finances. And that's what I'm endeavoring to do with these conversations over these few months. So I invite you to join me as we just have dialogue about the various areas of personal finance. Now, what I realize is that dialogue about personal finance is not commonplace for us as a people. We traditionally or historically have been told to hold our finances close. Don't let people know how much money you make. Don't let people know how many challenges you're having. Well, while I understand that because people have taken advantage of that information, there's also some detriment to not talking about our personal finances. But I want to stay on first why we don't talk about our personal finances. One reason is because traditionally we've been taught not to, as I mentioned before. Another reason that we don't talk about personal finances is because we're insecure in talking about them. And then also we think we need a lot of money to be able to even bridge the discussion on personal finances. The other thing, we don't even know what to ask. I remember in my work days, someone would explain something to me and then they say, would you have any questions? If you're like me, I didn't even know what questions to ask when persons were first introducing things to me. So sometimes we don't talk because we don't know what to ask. And then the last reason that I'll mention here is that we don't talk because we don't know where to start. And it's funny because all of those reasons are the reasons we should talk so that we can become more secure about talking about our finances, so that we won't be tricked by the things that are going on. If we dialogue with those that have information, and then those of us that may not have that information, we will be empowered with information that will enable us to identify the questions we need to ask and ask intelligent questions, to know where to start so that we can manage our finances ourselves. Then another reason we should talk is to eliminate the thought of isolation. I've learned that one of the tricks of the enemy is to make us think we're all by ourselves. We're the only ones suffering through particular hardships. But once we start talking or sharing our testimony, we recognize we are not alone. So it's so important to talk so that you can understand that there are people going through the same thing that you've gone through. But more importantly, there are people that have gone through it and survived it and even thrived in the midst of it. So that will give you the encouragement you need that you're going to come through this thing. You're not going to be a victim. You're going to be a victor. So as long as we keep talking, we can help one another out and not feel isolated as the enemy intends for us to feel. Then talking helps us to explore options. Well, what did you do? And what worked for you? Oh, okay. Well, what would possibly work for me? What are my options? I believe, and I know personally, stress is relieved when we have options. Every time I feel like my back is against the wall, one of the first questions that comes to mind, what are my options? And when I begin to enumerate my options, the stress and the back against the wall gets eliminated. Even if I lose a job, an option is someone else that I know that could give me a job that brings in any amount of money until I'm able to work to the next step. When I know that I can find a job somewhere, then my stress is somewhat relieved. So dialoguing helps us to explore our options. And of course, in exploring options, we begin to help one another. Then it dispels myths. When we talk, we get rid of bad information and we're empowered with good information. When we talk, we can improve our instincts, if you will. So that when people are sharing with us, when we hear something that's too good to be true, we know it must not be true. So we can begin to strengthen our instincts so we can follow them with confidence in knowing what's being shared with us, whether it's good information or bad information. As we begin this dialogue, I'm hoping that we can just talk more and more, be it through the chat. And what I would endeavor to do, if you have a question through the chat, to prepare to answer that question for the next session and do my very best. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything, but the other thing I'd like to do during the sessions is to bring in experts and just have them to talk about certain areas that I may not know as much about. But the key thing is to have takeaways for you, resources like perhaps a book or a website. There are so many tools out here for doing personal finance online, and I realize some of the listeners may be more familiar with apps and everything like that. So I'm going to have to come up to speed on the various apps, or if I don't, I can invite someone that knows those various apps and how to use them. The key thing is that we keep talking so that we can have the resources and the information we need to manage and navigate our financial situation. Now, as we go through the various topics, I want us to be aware of some of the things we might be discussing in the times to come. And as I said before, these are going to be foundational items that we can use to help us to move forward. First of all, one of the key things and foundational things is a spending plan. If you want, some people don't like the B word, but a budget, if you want to call it that. And I want to stress, it's going to be a working document. It's going to be something that you continue to update to make it realistic so that you can use it. If you don't do that, you're going to set it to the side and continue with your old spending habits. It is a discipline that has to be developed. When we talk about a spending plan, we're going to talk about where do you start to even get the information for your spending plan. It's very personal. What I spend money on is different from what you spend money on. We're not going to be trying to cold turkey and say, I'm not spending money on that anymore, because it's not realistic. We're going to do it. It's just getting a handle on how we're spending and then managing that. Then we're going to talk about an emergency fund. Especially, as I mentioned before, with job loss, we're going to need a fund or a resource that we can use to move us through job transitions. Job transitions happen. Emergencies happen. If we get on disability, we will have a waiting period before the benefit kicks in. All of these things are times we would use an emergency fund. Not for that new pair of Louboutin shoes. That's not an emergency, but there are situations in which we would need to use those funds. We're also going to talk about where to place those funds. Then we're going to switch gears to looking at credit. The society we live in, we've got to be able to manage credit and hopefully keep a good credit score so that when we need to borrow money, we will be able to borrow money. So we're going to talk about our credit score. What is it? How to monitor it? What do we need to do? And also need to look into are the changes our current administration is making to the credit score analysis. Then we're going to talk about, hand in hand with credit score, is our credit itself. How to use it wisely. Credit can be a benefit if we know how to use it wisely. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. What are the times where you need to use your cash that are available to you? And then what are the times when you need to leverage credit? Then just another means of talking about credit is mortgages. Many of us know that in 2008, we went through some pretty challenging times because of the lack of information we had about mortgages. There were those that most of the time when people operate in scams, they're operating from a place of greed, and we suffered the consequences. So we want to talk about mortgages. What are the different types? Why you would use one type versus another type? Loan officers, so that when you get in front of people and you're ready to purchase a home or you need a mortgage, exactly what you need to do, and you can ask your loan officer intelligent questions about the type of mortgages that you need to have. Then you want to also look at how much house can you afford? Because if you don't look at that, someone will make that decision for you. And that could put you in a vulnerable situation. The other area I think that's a challenge is insurances. When I worked in the financial industry, I would do a consultation, a complimentary consultation. And what I found most often is people were not aware of the insurance policies that they had or how they worked. So when we talk about insurance, we want to talk about the various types, the types you absolutely need, the things you need to avoid, and just enough information so that when you get in front of an insurance professional, you can ask intelligent questions, because all insurance is not for everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about college situations and what is the best thing to do. College is expensive right now. And so when you sit down with your young adult and look at what is it that what are their options, we want to look at what makes sense for them. What is it that the job market is looking for? And then make education decisions based upon that. Perhaps they just need certifications to get them started and then can take on college after the fact. So things like that is what we're going to look at. Then we're going to look at investment basics. As I said, I worked as a financial advisor before. So just the basics of what's a stock, what's a bond, what's a mutual fund, why would you invest in one versus another? And why would you invest, period? And then when we talk about investing, what about retirement investing? What are the different types of tools or investment vehicles we could use for retirement planning or education planning as well? And then let's talk a little about savings and what we need to do for saving for big ticket items we know we need to replace. For instance, a car. Most of the time with a car, you decide you're going to take out a loan. Then once you need to get a new car, you're going to take out another loan. Well, we don't necessarily have to do that if we plan accordingly. So we're going to talk a little bit about savings and what to save toward. Then last of all, we're going to look at a conversation about setting up an LLC or a nonprofit, if that's something you're interested in. And with that conversation, I definitely intend to have someone here because I want to learn how to set up a nonprofit or an LLC. So that's our introduction. I thank you for taking the time to listen. And I thank God and Reverend Irene for this opportunity to just get kicked off and share my passion with you through another form of media. It is my hope that you will join me on this journey and let's just talk about personal finances. But for now, I'm going to sign off and say, see you again next time.